Bienvenidos a otro episodio de Va de Retro. Hoy quiero hablar de una película que muchos católicos han recomendado, incluso sacerdotes, una película que se llama Nefarious. Algunos incluso han dicho que es una de las películas más realistas sobre el demonio que se han hecho en el cine. Pero la pregunta que quiero hacer es otra. ¿Es realmente una película católica?
Crux sacra sit mihi lux, non draco sit mihi dux, vade retro satana.
Que la película tiene cosas muy interesantes, pero también tiene algunos problemas teológicos bastante serios. Y creo que vale la pena analizarlos con calma.
Today is the scheduled day of execution for Edward Wayne Brady. And kids, all it took was just a string of cold-blooded
La
murder.
historia es muy simple. Un psiquiatra forense entra en una prisión para evaluar a un condenado a muerte. Su tarea es determinar si el hombre está mentalmente sano antes de ser ejecutado. El psiquiatra se llama James Martin. James Martin, ¿no? Un nombre que a los católicos probablemente nos suene. Su trabajo consiste en responder una pregunta muy concreta. ¿Este hombre está loco o está en pleno uso de su razón? Pero cuando empieza el interrogatorio, el prisionero afirma algo completamente diferente. Dice que no está loco, dice que está poseído y que el demonio que lo habita se llama Nefarius.
The name my master gifted to me is in a Phoenician dialect that hasn't been spoken for 3,500 years, but I'll give you the nearest English equivalent, which would be Nefariamus.
Nefarious?
A partir de ahí, toda la película se convierte prácticamente en un diálogo entre dos personas, dos personajes, un interrogatorio psicológico, pero también un combate espiritual. Ahora bien, desde el punto de vista cinematográfico, hay algo que la película logra muy bien. Y eso, bueno, tenemos que reconocerlo. Toda la película ocurre prácticamente en un solo lugar. Una mesa, dos personas, un espacio cerrado. Eso exige muchísimo al director. Lo digo como colega de la actuación y de la fotografía. La cámara está constantemente cerca de los rostros. Hay muchos primeros planos intensos. La iluminación es muy controlada. Las sombras profundas. Contrastes fuertes. Y todo eso genera una sensación muy particular. La sensación de que el espectador está encerrado en esa habitación con el demonio.
The character of Edward is a tortured soul who can't even fathom the fact that his body committed these crimes.
Yeah.
It doesn't process for him, and he's horrified at the prospect of dying.
En varias entrevistas dijo que no quería representar al demonio como un monstruo exagerado. Quería algo mucho más inquietante, una inteligencia fría, una presencia que manipula psicológicamente, alguien que parece tranquilo, pero que está dominando toda la situación. Escuchemos un momento lo que explicó el actor sobre cómo preparó este personaje.
It's make believe. When the script is that well written, I did my best to design a character that people believed. But it doesn't mean that any part of it was me or I lost part of my soul in playing an evil.
Esto es interesante porque coincide con algo que muchos exorcistas han explicado. El demonio rara vez actúa de forma espectacular. Muchas veces actúa de forma sutil, con inteligencia, con manipulación. Y precisamente por eso resulta mucho más peligroso.
For those people that don't believe in the devil, declare war against him and see what happens. Well, we declared war against the devil, so for the Lord.
Ahora bien, antes de analizar la película en sí, hay algo curioso que contaron los propios realizadores. Durante varias entrevistas explicaron que durante el rodaje ocurrieron algunas cosas extrañas, problemas técnicos inesperados, dificultades constantes, situaciones que ellos interpretaron como una especie de interferencia espiritual, digamos. Escuchemos lo que explicaron los directores sobre lo que ocurrió durante el rodaje.
And I will say that honestly, from the first moment, the script took a year. Weird, crazy things happened. We just recently had our office the roof was ripped off.
entire
the
building's roof.
entire building's roof.
During the middle of torrential rains, the ones that you might have heard of here in California, but we were the only building in.
But rain
Burbank or
doesn't rip
anywhere.
off roofs,
Right.
you know, and whoosh, the whole building got filled with water. It's
Destroyed the building. We just found
like
out.
a water park.
We just found out. We didn't know the night of our premiere. Our marketing chief, who was in the high water mark of his activity, while on his way home from the premiere in the plane, his eardrum perforated.
We had Steve Dace, the guy who wrote the book Nefarious Plot. He basically came to set on the first day, got very, very sick. He had a cyst under his arm, suddenly disappears. Literally 3-4 days ago,
Well,
it comes
the,
back.
the night before our theatrical premiere, or 2 nights before our theatrical premiere. He starts off with it in the morning. By nightfall, he's in the ER, mumbling and muttering incoherently,
and is near death.
and has a live infection. He's got MRSA. They find out in his bloodstream. It's everywhere. He almost dies. They have to do surgery. He has to cancel. We had our first shooting attempt. We're 10 days from shooting. 9 of our 15 keys go down with
We're 6
COVID.
days away from shooting, and COVID wipes out the crew.
Carrie was in the hospital for 8 days. So then now we have to cancel production, obviously. We have to recover our standing sets. We rented a basketball arena, a former professional basketball arena. It's enormous. It's 12,000 seats. That's where our set stands. We have to rent it for 5 months while we recuperate, while we
Costs
regroup.
us $600,000 extra dollars. I mean, on set in the first 11, 12 days, we had 8 car accidents.
Yeah.
And we didn't have a big crew. And here's the amazing thing. 8 car accidents, most of them total. Not a person got hurt. So it's like the adversary does what he does, but the Lord does what he does. In other words, you want to try and stop the movie, but I'm going to protect the people doing the movie, and they keep going on.
We had a 3-person ministry team, a husband and wife. The husband's a minister, and we had a Catholic priest who's exorcism trained. We expected spiritual battle. The priest who was staying with us had to undergo during shooting an emergency appendectomy. His appendix burst during removal.
And he almost died.
And the surgeon told him, if you got here an hour later, you would not be here. And then to top that, the cherry on the ice cream sundae, day 4, IATSE, which is the union, the most powerful union in the film industry, represents all the trades, struck us without a strike vote, without a specified grievance, and tried to get the federal government to shut down our production.
So I want you to realize that the adversary tries to get the federal government to shut down the movie. On top of that, by the way, this is one of the spooky ones right here, is that, so we're shooting a scene where they're talking about the devil, and all of a sudden, the convention center starts to groan.
Yeah.
The girders in the ceiling go, and it sounds like we're in hell.
Right.
So we let that go, but you can't really tape a scene. So we kind of wait. We do it again. It starts groaning again. We notice that when we're shooting the scenes, when we're speaking about the devil, the building, now we have a lot of atheists, we have secular people, we have all kinds of people in the crew and everything. Even they acknowledge this sounds like we're in hell.
Then I talked to Carrie and Chuck, who are the creators of the movie. They wrote the story. They were the main producers. And this kind of diabolical phenomena happened throughout every stage of the filming and then the editing process. So I did see the movie. It is easily the best movie on exorcism that I have ever seen. It's not a horror movie. It is a movie that brings you into the mind of the devil. So it is not sensationalistic. It is very much intellectual to show you how the devil thinks and how he goes about trying to ensnare people.
Cuando se habla de estos temas conviene mantener siempre un cierto equilibrio. La tradición cristiana reconoce que el demonio existe y que actúa, pero también enseña algo muy importante. El demonio no tiene poder absoluto, actúa siempre dentro de límites que Dios permite. Muchos exorcistas han contado experiencias parecidas. El famoso exorcista romano, el padre Gabriele Amort, explicaba que cuando se expone públicamente la acción del demonio, a veces aparecen resistencias o confusiones, pero siempre dentro de límites. Porque en definitiva el demonio no gobierna el mundo, Dios sí. Ahora bien, si analizamos la película con atención, hay varias cosas que están bastante bien representadas. Primero, la inteligencia del demonio, en la película el demonio no actúa como una fuerza bruta, actúa como una inteligencia. Manipula, provoca, estudia la mente del psiquiatra, busca sus puntos débiles. Esto coincide bastante con lo que describen muchos exorcistas con los cuales yo hablé. El demonio no suele atacar de manera espectacular. Su alma principal es la mentira, la confusión, la manipulación, la desesperación. También hay otro detalle interesante. Un exorcista que analizó la película en una entrevista dijo que la película representa bastante bien la forma en que el demonio intenta manipular psicológicamente a las personas. Escuchemos brevemente ese comentario.
And so I was invited by the producers of the movie to come in and be a consultant and be their guest. They had sent me a screener of the movie to review, and I thought the movie was really well done. It really, really portrayed the whole drama of exorcism well in a way that is not sensational like so many of the other movies out there are. And so this evening, they were recording interviews with various different persons, with the different producers, the cinematographer, and the people who had contributed to the movie. And they asked for an interview for me. And so that interview took about 75 minutes or so. And afterwards, I left. I went for a long walk and met a friend. I was out for about 2 hours. And then when at a certain point, I realized I didn't turn on my phone from having turned it off for the interviewing. And when I turned it back on, there was a plethora of text messages coming from one of the producers. And so the first message said, Father, unfortunately, we're going to have to record parts of your interview over again. Some of the files are simply deleted. They're nowhere to be found, and others are corrupted, so we can't open them. So if you would be so kind as to come back so we could do that, or do it sometime tomorrow before the premiere. The next message, Father, we have problems now with all of our recording and audio equipment. Not sure what is going on. Next text message. Father, now the lights are flickering on and off. We're hearing sounds coming from the couches. Can you please come here and do some prayers? So I grabbed a taxi and came back to the hotel. I went into my room, made some holy water, and then I went into the room where the interviewing was happening, and I stood in a corner facing the window, just like I'm doing right now. I'm in my own room now. And I stood kind of at the nexus where, at the center of where the phenomena was happening, all of the different manifestations. And so I just started the ritual of exorcism of place. And as I started to pray it, the ritual takes about 7 minutes to pray. As I was about a minute or a minute and a half into it, right behind me, there was the sound of a woman that I heard doing some kind of chanting, some kind of singing. But the sound, and obviously, I mean, nobody was behind me. What's behind me is the window facing the courtyard, and we're up on the 5th floor. The sound sounded like it was coming and being played on a TV or so, or on a radio. That was just right behind me. I continued praying the prayers, and when I got to the part in the ritual that says in Latin, but the English rendering is bow down to the holy and terrible name of Jesus, everything stopped. The manifestations stopped, the blinking lights stopped, all of the problems with the recording and so forth stopped. And you know, so we continued onwards. I did the rest of my interviewing, and they saw in me, the producer with whom I was working saw a grin on my face, and she said, Father, this might be old hat for you, but it isn't for us. Why do you have a grin on your face? And I said, look, if the devil goes out of his way to let you know that what you're doing is a bother to him, then you've just won. If you got the devil to step off the couch and come and express to you how much he hates what you're doing, it's because what you're doing is really good.
Sin embargo, hay una parte de la película que plantea una pregunta muy interesante. y es la forma en que el demonio habla de teología. Durante largos momentos, el demonio parece explicar con bastante claridad cómo funciona el mal, cómo manipula al ser humano, cómo actúa en la sociedad. En otras palabras, el demonio parece estar dando una especie de clase de teología moral al psiquiatra.
You know, theology isn't my area of expertise, so, I thought I'd get a professional opinion.
You're making a mistake.
Are you threatening me?
Yes.
What are you gonna do?
Well, if I'm just a man like you think I am, not much. But if I am who I say I am.
Well, that would probably be very intimidating if I weren't an atheist.
You ignorant sack of meat. You think your atheism will protect you? Oh, I don't believe in angels or demons, heaven or hell. So you can't hurt me. Hell is full of pathetic trash who thought exactly like you do. Boldly proclaiming their ideas on how they feel the universe operates, never once contemplating the possibility that they could be wrong. You should see him now.
Y acá aparece una pregunta muy importante. ¿Por qué haría eso? ¿Por qué, según la tradición cristiana, el demonio, que es el padre de la mentira, haría eso? El demonio no quiere revelar la verdad. El demonio quiere confundir. Entonces, la pregunta me parece legítima. ¿Por qué el demonio estaría evangelizando al psiquiatra, que era ateo? En la tradición cristiana, los exorcistas han observado algo muy concreto. Durante un exorcismo, el demonio puede decir cosas verdaderas, pero normalmente ocurre en situaciones muy específicas. Cuando es obligado a hacerlo, cuando decir una verdad sirve para provocar un mal mayor, o cuando mezcla verdad con mentira, las famosas medias verdades, ¿no? Una estrategia clásica del demonio es mezclar eso, ¿no? Verdades con engaños. Por eso esta parte de la película es interesante, pero también es ambigua, porque parece presentar al demonio como un profesor de teología, cuando en realidad el demonio es el gran falsificador de la verdad. El demonio puede decir la verdad, pero nunca la va a decir para salvar a alguien. Siempre la dice para perderlo. También hay otra escena muy interesante, la aparición del sacerdote.
No! Nobody wants you here, priest! Nobody needs you!
On the contrary, I invited him here. Thank you for coming.
Father Lewis. I'm fine with just Lewis. Lou.
Dr. James Martin, have you met with him before?
No. I've tried. He's always refused spiritual counseling.
What do you want with me, son of God? Come here to torture me before the appointed time?
He claims he's a demon.
Carpenter sends you to gloat. Unfortunately for you, I'm not one that can be cast out so easily, though, am I?
Sanity always has been an issue here, hasn't it? Sadly, movies and TV have filled our heads with images that are largely metaphorical, not meant to be taken literally.
El sacerdote que aparece en la película intenta tranquilizar al psiquiatra, pero es un sacerdote que no parece creer realmente la dimensión sobrenatural, preternatural de lo que está sucediendo, ¿no? Produce toda psicología, a estrés, a sugestión. Y aquí la película está haciendo una crítica bastante clara, ¿no? Una crítica a cierto tipo de sacerdote moderno. Un sacerdote que ha perdido el sentido del combate espiritual. Un sacerdote que ya no habla del demonio, que ya no habla del pecado, que ya no habla del mal como una realidad espiritual.
I'm not here to hurt you, Edward. I'm here to help you, to put you at your ease, to make sure you're comfortable. Personally, I've never met a demon. I've never been part of an exorcism, nor do I expect to be. Many of the things that bother us are just our own fears and disordered thoughts.
You don't consider demonic possession to be a possibility?
Our understanding has evolved beyond that.
Well, I appreciate you telling me that. I feel much better. And Lou, I was wrong about you. I should have had you come and visit sooner. But I'm glad that you did. I'm glad that we're all getting along.
Would you like me to stay?
No, we're done.
La película El demonio prácticamente ignora a ese sacerdote luego que se da cuenta de que no es un peligro, no es una amenaza para él. Y eso es algo muy significativo, ¿no? Porque un sacerdote que ya no cree en el demonio no representa ninguna amenaza para él. Esto recuerda algo que decía muchas veces el exorcista, el padre Gabriele Amorth. El mayor triunfo del demonio es hacer creer que no existe. Y podríamos decir algo más. Hay sacerdotes que ya no creen en el demonio, pero el demonio sí cree en el sacerdote.
It's time. We're moving.
No, please, no, Why are you doing this to me? You tell them the truth. Tell them the truth. You tell him I didn't do this. I didn't do this. I didn't. Please help me.
Ahora bien, hasta aquí hemos hablado de cosas interesantes de la película. Pero hay un problema importante. Aparece sobre todo en el final. La sensación, a mí me pasó eso, la sensación que deja la película es que el demonio ha ganado, ¿no? Como una desesperanza, que su plan se cumple, que el protagonista queda atrapado, ¿no?, en el plan del demonio. Y aquí aparece una diferencia muy profunda con la visión cristiana, ¿no? La tradición cristiana, para la tradición cristiana el demonio es real, el combate espiritual es real. Pero el demonio no es el protagonista de la historia. En la película parece que sí. Cristo ya ha vencido al demonio. Dios permite el mal, pero nunca permite el mal sin abrir al mismo tiempo un camino de salvación, un camino de redención, un camino de conversión. Y ese es el problema que tiene esta película, ¿no? Que queda incompleta, ¿no? Tiene intuiciones muy interesantes, tiene momentos potentes, pero le falta algo esencial, que es la esperanza del cristiano, ¿no? La certeza de que el mal nunca tiene la última palabra. Nos vemos en el próximo episodio.
Vade retro Satana.